First one was I just put an announcement in from Mark. Secret Santa sign up if you haven't seen it. If you want to participate, last day to sign up is the 7th, and then there's some other details. If you click the link and go to the forum, there's a bunch of details, but I added a few to the top. So take a look. I think it'll be fun if you're interested, and that's it. Um, the first one on the block for discussion is instrumentation for code review. So I put this epic together, and I will preface this with saying um, there's some existing instrumentation for code review, and there's an existing somewhat, I think it's a database based like MAU metric is what it has, because code review uses create, closed, or merged in MR is the only way we count you as a user in code review. As a correlation to source code, that's probably fairly accurate. As a correlation to like users who might participate, that's not necessarily accurate. And then you couple that with the fact that there's been improvements in our ability to do telemetry with some Redis counters that can count across users and dedupe. And I think we even have a Redis counter, a single Redis counter in code review, although I don't know what it counts yet. But what we need to do is probably beef that up and make sure we're accounting for all of the actions that people take inside of code review. That is how other groups do this. I will say it's a little bit gamey in the sense that it's an easy way to inflate the count of your users, but that's the metric product uses. So the downside to all of our telemetry stuff at GitLab is it takes months and months to get data because it's like a 90-day, well, the first of it is it's like 70 days from the time you release to the first time you'll get data back into the data warehouse from self-managed. And then you bundle that with an additional like 60 days for, on average, people are within 3 releases. So you have to like wait 3 releases from the time you've gotten it plus that 70. So it's like 100 days before you get data, which is miserable. It's fairly ineffective. Also, VS Code needs to start doing this because it is now its own category and we're going to make investment and we need telemetry out of it. And Tomas and I have been talking about it with data teams, and it sounds like we're going to need to build middleware to like intercept API requests as the only way we can do this in a way that people feel comfortable, which is also like not trivial. And we don't know what that'll do to the extension in terms of performance because we'll essentially insert a catch in every single call, and it generates several 100,000 calls to gitlab.com per month. So all of that, given that we're already on December 2nd, like this is about 2 weeks to sort of prep code review instrumentation issues for both of those things. And so that is what I want to try and figure out is like, what do we need to do to get time on both of those efforts to make sure that we have all the issues in place, and that, because this will, like even on the VS Code, like all the backend code that's going to need to go into GitLab is more than just Tomas, right? Other people are going to have to do that. So we've got lots of people that need to look at this and figure out what all it's going to take, so that we can do this during 13.8 and try and get it all wrapped up and knocked out.
So Kai, this events to instrument list, some of these we already have, right? You don't know. So that's my question. So we can go through and say, well, we've already got XYZ. That leaves these. There are already issues open for some of those. There aren't for these. And then we can gather that. Is that what the ask is?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I would say the question that I would have if some of these are instrumented would, my immediate follow-up is going to be, are they instrumented the same across everything and measuring the same? So that way we can, because what is not helpful is like, oh, well, we have this one way to track suggestions. and it's just a counter, and it counts everybody that adds a suggestion. What we need is the like deduped Mao Redis HLL counter sort of for all of this. That way you can, that allows you to say this specific action had X number of users, and then across the collection of the actions that are all in the same category, here's the like deduped list of users. So now I can say that there was like 500 people that added a suggestion, and in total code review had 10,000 users or something. And that's the way that we need to be able to talk about these things in the future. And I don't, as far as I know, none of it is instrumented that way. There is instrumentation on some of this. You're right, that you can go and see things, but they're not instrumented in a way that like we could, you could ask a sort of more complex question against them.
We better get started, Andre. If any of these apply to you, I think a lot of them apply to me.
No, yeah, I was going down the list, and I don't see any of these that is front end only. Because if they are front end only, then we need to implement it on the front end. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not entirely sure how all the instrumentation has been done so far, because like you said, it's mostly backend. It's basically instrumentation have been taken care of on the backend for these. Now, what we're looking for counters. Have we done that recently, where we set a counter for an action on the Redis?
We've done it twice.
Okay.
Mark Shaw got very, in my opinion, at the time it was very clever in his implementation, and he shared it with Carrie, who I think was working on a similar task right after.
Okay.
And then he shared that with the data team, and they kind of spread it out. So that's a very recent thing.
All right.
Yeah, these counters are new-ish. And I linked plans issue, which just merged like a month ago, maybe last milestone or the milestone before plan finally finished it. So plan instrumented basically a very similar exhaustive list, and it took them about it took 2 engineers essentially a full milestone to do that across an issue. That's what they did. And so all their MRs and issues are linked in this epic that you can take a look at to get like a sense of what it took to do that, because it'll be a fairly similar effort for us, because we essentially are going to treat the merge request page like an issue in terms of the actions that we're going to track across it, and then some.
Yeah, looking at the list of actions, all of them, one of the things that comes to mind is all of these are system nodes. Like all of these events generate system nodes. Now, I wonder if there's any way for us to just like, I don't know, piggyback on that code that generates that system nodes and just track those. Because if you track the system nodes, you track the actions. And actually that raises another question is, can we go and backtrack this? But not backtrack this, but generate backfill. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Data migration or something.
Plans is heavily based on system note metadata for a lot of it on that table. So that's part of it too.
Okay. So to set up an action plan, Michelle, do you need help coming up with the ones that we are tracking? Because like you said, if it's recent, then it should be 0 or next to none.
Yeah, even though we are the ones who implement a lot of the usage ping and instrumentation issues, I don't know where they end up or how to get them or how they're used. So maybe Daniel would be a really good help there for me to understand those things. But yeah, any guidance there. Probably what I will do though is just go through all of the recent usage ping stuff and see how they were done.
Okay. Let me know if you need any help uncovering this. I definitely feel like if we can find a shortcut to just build one instrumentation task that tracks the system nodes and recover a bunch of these, that would be amazing. I don't know if that's doable.
Yeah, okay. And then the other one is the VS Code stuff. So we also need to look in to that. And that issue is added as an issue to this epic where all the discussions of data and the SRE team and whatever are in there. I think the only way we have a path forward is the middleware, but someone can take a look and then figure out what we want to do there.
Okay, and just so that I'm aware, the solution for the VS Code is going to rely on intercepting those calls kind of stuff, which it's either on the back end or Tomasz will have to do something on the VS Code side.
Yeah, I think the plan would be, and I don't know, this is where it sort of gets complicated. The VS Code extension sends its own user agent, so we know when it makes a request. And so you could look for that sort of in API calls and then put basically count, and then you just count that user agent, that request, because it came with that user agent, and you keep a total count in GitLab of those, and then you report that total count as part of usage ping data. But the VS Code extension accesses like every API at GitLab, and so now you've got this question of like, do you add this to, like, how do you deal with that sort of everywhere? I think.
Yeah. The alternative would be to intercept them on the VS Code side, the VS Code extension side, and do a double request, like a second request to track it, which is not ideal, but might be a way around this. So I think it's just a matter of like keeping that discussion evolving. I'm looking, there's already a bunch of it. I'll keep an eye on that and see if we can contribute.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it. I think I know the telemetry stuff is not fun, and we did it like 5 times over in editor because it kept changing as a moving target. So I know it's not fun, but I'm hoping if we get this in as like a baseline, then sort of everything new we do, we now just know that it has to follow this like reference implementation, and it'll be much simpler sort of moving forward for new features. Cool. Any other questions on that? Thoughts, concerns? I think Michelle is concerned, but
Yeah, I'll be fine.
okay.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to go through like where existing data is and tell you how you can look at it in SciSense. But I don't know how it gets into SciSense, which is like the less helpful piece of that maybe.
That's an easy part for me because I'm a SciSense editor. So I can see all of that. That'll help.
Cool. So maybe summarizing the action points, Kai, if you could get those dashboards to Michelle, I feel like that's the first start. And then Michelle can will you be able to create the issues for 13.8? Because I think that's the pressure, like to have issues prepared for 13.8 in line to be implemented.
Yes. It looks like there's a chance that, yeah, I think it'll be okay.
Okay.
Cool.
If you need another pair of eyes, Michelle, to double check, I'll happy to jump on a call.
Yeah, I don't know how great the issues will be.
No, we could craft them together if it helps.
But they'll have titles on them for sure.
Awesome.
Cool. The next one is, it looks like Igor merged and it's in production, the change for the diff stuff base. Should we try it again? Anyone have objections to turning it back on?
No objections. What I think I'll do is I'll toggle the flag on again for those projects, our GitLab org, GitLab and GitLab con www, and ping the people that reported the problems to check immediately if they see something out of the ordinary. And we'll know right away if they do. Okay, I'll do that today.
Yeah, we could probably just check those merge requests without even pinging them to see if they look.
Yeah. No, as soon as we turn it on, I'll take a look but usually there might be some things that we miss.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all aware of the compromise, right? That if it's a merge MR, is that what he did? Like if it's a merge MR, he just uses the normal comparison base version.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I don't know if that's the correct. I left a comment for him, but he has not followed up.
Okay.
Because that would change as soon as you merge something, that's going to change the way the diffs look versus the way they got reviewed. So I don't know if this needs to be like, it feels like it should be like a merged and cache does not exist, or like branch delete, like something. So I don't know if there's a follow-up to this or not.
I saw that too. I think there is a follow-up, but I want to wait for Igor to reply. And I think Patrick can probably jump in there too, because I think part of this is the work that Patrick did in order to optimize storage. He's deleting all of the closed MRs after a certain amount of time. So there probably is a follow-up, but we'll just see.
Okay. Now that you're talking about, that switch between what was reviewed to a different kind of diff sounds like it can cause some trouble, especially if, like, when we merge something, we want to go back to the comments. We might want to go back to the comments and we can link to a comment. But if the diff is not there, if the lines are different, if the files are different, then the comments won't be there as well. So I don't know. I have some questions about whether this will cause some noise, but we'll see. I'm happy to enable it and see what people say about it. But yeah, sounds iffy.
Yeah, I think on a merge state, it's going to be not right still. So we definitely need to figure that out.
Okay. So basically enabling it, waiting for Igor to weigh in and see if we have a follow-up. Okay. All right. Can we move on to the next one?
I'm good.
All right. So doing a bit of a middle of the milestone check-in. I took a look. We're at, oh gosh, I didn't put it here. We're at 50%. Wow, 50% elapsed of the milestone, like to the mark, specifically 50%. And the front end, as it looks, it's at an estimated 60% completion. It looks like we have a big bulk of work still in dev. So we have 10 issues currently in dev. And with 4 engineers, that's kind of like 2 per engineer, a little bit more than that. So it feels like we should definitely make sure that these get into conclusion. And from what I looked, from the looks of it, Thomas was on vacation last week. So we have this push now to do the big task that he has to mark the files as reviewed. That's to the now in this section of the milestone. The one that I think is at risk of slipping, I just talked to Jacques today, and the file order, the merge request file order inconsistent with sidebar list view. So it's a complex issue just because it looks obvious, but we have some side effects and stuff. So I uncovered a bit of a potential problem because we're discussing a solution that would be just backend based, where we change the order of the diff files. But there are some cases, some kind of situations where the file list and the tree list are not exactly in the same order. So we might have to go deeper than just like a reordering of the diff files. So including front-end changes, including some questions that might be hard for Pedro to, it's not on the call, is he? No. For Pedro to sort out from the UX perspective, because some situations will cause a scenario where we have a folder and it starts listing the files on the subfolder, and then it goes back to the initial folder. And let me share my screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. This is the situation that I'm describing. So you have theories BI, then he goes into theories BI lib, then he goes back to theories BI. This is in a way, if you want to keep the listing simple, based on the order of the backend. If we don't want to keep that simple, then the backend needs to change the order that it's giving the files depending on the file tree mode, the file browser mode. That complicates a little bit the solution. I've discussed this with Jack today, and he's going to be posting a comment to clarify this with Patrick and Pedro. But to me, feels like it's a bit on the edge because Jack is going on PTO on December 10th, so it might be a little tight to get this done by next Wednesday. And even if so, we might have, if it slips, we'll find someone to tackle this, whether it's 13.8 or late 13.7. We'll see if we can have Phil jump on it. But just wanted you to be aware that there's a risk of that slipping. Summarizing.
Am I up? I'm 44% through. Everything looks good. The only people who actually aren't ahead are the people who had last week off for Thanksgiving. So I'm not concerned.
Any questions, Kai?
Is there an MR up? It doesn't look like there's an MR open for that yet.
For the file list?
Yeah.
Check real quick. So Jacques is definitely not having an MR because up until now, the discussion was backend only implementation. But they were having a discussion on the...
Okay, discussions, right? I just didn't see an MR open yet.
Yeah, it's on the issue. Yeah, correct.
There's sort of an MR. Okay, cool.
Awesome. So moving on to my next point, we have 5 minutes. This is about our discussion in Slack, Kai, that you opened up about the GraphQL on the merge request widget. I chatted with Phil today, and basically the biggest question that we have right now is where is the line where we can turn this on? We don't have a decisive decision on this, but I can tell you that the situation is this. If we turn it on right now, there are some data that was moved over from the REST endpoint to the GraphQL queries. They were not removed yet. So I feel like if we turn it on right now, we have the impact of having duplicated data being loaded, both on the REST endpoint and on the GraphQL endpoint. So there's nothing really stopping us from enabling it right now, except this wasteful data request. Okay. Now, ideally, to do this properly, to not leave like stale data on those requests, when we roll this out, we'll be removing the code from the REST endpoint. This could be just putting the inclusion of the data in the REST endpoint behind that feature flag. Because that endpoint is specifically for the widget. It's not an API endpoint. So I feel like we're definitely okay in customizing that. So that'll be my plan, like schedule an issue to move the code in the data in the REST endpoint behind a feature flag so that if it's on the GraphQL, it doesn't return that on the REST. If it's off, then it returns that on the REST. That'll be my suggestion to roll it out. And we can start doing that in 13.8. There's nothing blocking us there. The other thing I wanted to mention is like the blockers on the verify side and all that. From what I understand, they have access to the state. So they don't really need to depend on how this data is loaded unless they're doing some queries on GraphQL specifically to other endpoints. But even then, it's not really a big blocker. They can start using it themselves. I feel like what they're talking about, if they're relying on the data coming from the GraphQL endpoint, they will only be able to use that if that flag is on. But I think we should roll it out as soon as, regardless of that. So we'll unblock them regardless of that. So question, I wanted to get your feedback on the plan of the rollout in particular. Does that sound good?
I don't know that I would not send the data in REST. I feel like sort of just complicates the feature flag and makes it unclear like what broke where at that point. But I guess the question would then be, how do we get everything migrated to use the GraphQL? stuff instead of like for other people that have things in there? Do they have to do work to migrate to the GraphQL
So
endpoint?
so the work that we're doing on migrating states to GraphQL is Phil is handling that in particular. So by the time that we're moving them out, they'll already be using the GraphQL if the feature flag is on. The reason why it complicates the REST endpoint is we can't just remove them, because if you turn off the feature flag, then we'll go back to REST endpoint. So we need to have the data there. We could simply bite the bullet and take the duplicated data for a while until we're comfortable in removing it completely. I don't know the dimension of that, what that would mean in terms of payload, in terms of timing, but it'd be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily care. What I guess my concerns were, one, CI is blocked. The CI group is, or thinks they're blocked for whatever
Yeah.
reason because of,
I'm going to talk to Sam about that later this week, about clarifying that. How exactly are they blocked? Or if
Okay.
they just like, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I want to talk to them to make sure they clarify that, whether they're fully blocked, or they don't want to get messing with that part until we're done, kind of thing. But I don't think technically they are blocked. I talked to Phil today and he doesn't have but I'm going to clarify that with Sam, make sure that we
Okay.
understand that. Regardless of that, we should definitely roll it out as soon as we possibly can. So
Yeah, we should roll it out as soon as we can. I guess with them being blocked, it sort of then, it sounds like they want to change the way information comes back to the widget that like defines how the merge button knows about what's wrong, which then blocks us on dependent MRs, moving that error message closer to the merge button. So like all of it is sort of like now in this
influx.
very unclear dependency chain. And I think that's the piece that I want to get ahead of, is like, let's make sure we either unblock and there's a path forward based on like future state of API, and like they could go and build based on that, or we build with what exists today and then do it again.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it'd be nice to just know from Phil what is a, like, yeah, where is like an endpoint to this too, I guess. Like, what are we doing and where's the endpoint, and where's a comfort level for getting the rest of it done and on, and like how long are we thinking the whole thing takes? I'll say that's one thing I have seen with stuff, is that it feels like it drags sometimes because it's never the actual priority. And so like, I'd rather we just, if we're gonna do it, if we've decided it's important, like we should just do it then.
Okay, so we'll prepare an issue to roll this out, and I'll aim it at 13.8.
Okay.
And I'll also discuss it with Sam to make sure that we clarify the blockage. To your other questions of other things that are interdependent, we were discussing, and there's still a thing with the merge request widget, which we don't really have a clear owner, even though we see it as code review. This particular thing about clarifying the merge button, now it's in verify, but in their mockup, only one of the error messages is verified. The other is source code. It's called code review. It's kind of like this weird gray area. So we definitely need to collaborate well here. So I'm happy that you're at least engaging with the verify there.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Appreciate it, everyone. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day and week.
Bye.